let's have a look at how we got here. I think it's probably not a controversial thing to say that most of the planet, most of the people on the planet right now are experiencing various degrees of restrictions on their freedom. Perhaps even threats to comply, if threats to their freedom if they do not go along with what they're being told to do. So what I want to do in the first part of this webinar is just examine how collectively this situation is manifested. I would suggest to you that the reason why the collective consciousness of this planet is manifesting that kind of restrictions on their freedom is because of two main elements. The first element is something called pushing against, and the second element is what I like to call sitting in the dark on a sunny day. Now, we are at this point in the webinar talking collectively. Your personal experience may be completely different to what the collective consciousness is experiencing. You can think of the collective consciousness as being the game board. You're playing some game on a large game board. And your personal experience is that you are a piece on that game board. So you can have your own experience walking around that game board, but there is still the parameters of the game you're playing within. So at this point, we're looking at the collective. So let's look at the first of these elements that I think is contributing to the manifestation that's going on this planet at the moment. It's the idea of pushing against. So pushing against is an Abraham term that I'm sure many of you, if not most of you, have come across before. It's basically the idea of giving your attention to something you don't want, with the misguided intention of making it go away. So if you imagine a situation where you're standing next to somebody, and you're both standing next to each other, and suddenly, for no reason, you start pushing that person. Well, an interesting thing happens. So imagine this person here is pushing this person here. And there's somewhat different body shapes there, but just assume they're both human beings. So this person is pushing here. What naturally happens when you try that? You'll find an interesting effect. That person always pushes back. Now, if you do it, obviously, suddenly or with great force, you might knock them over. But if you just gently start pushing them, they'll push back because they want to stand up. They don't want to fall over. So for every push, you get a push back. And this is very analogous to how law of attraction works. When you are trying to push something away, it pushes back. And the harder you push, the harder it will push back. So the law of attraction does that because it's responding to where your focus is. And if your focus is on something you don't want, it doesn't matter how much you don't want it. Just by giving your attention to it, you're going to get more of it. There's just no escape from that. Now, I am talking collectively here. So let me tell you what I perceive collectively has led to a lot of this. There is a word that's thrown about quite a lot at the moment. It has come to be, to some extent, a term of abuse. Even though the people who live by this word may have sincere good intentions, what they're doing is creating the opposite of what their intentions might be. And that word is woke, which I'm sure many of you have heard. In some ways, it's a similar word to the phrase we used to have of political correctness. Although woke is more of an attitude-based thing, whereas political correctness was more of a, you must use this word not to offend anybody. But woke itself, the idea of being woke, is almost like you can't do things that might offend others in some way. And as I said, it probably comes from sincere good intentions. So woke people might insist that, for example, you don't refer to somebody's gender, because these days you can change your gender if you wish to. And so it can be uncomfortable for people who've changed their gender, as, you know, whether should you call them a man or a woman? Well, no, you're not allowed to call them anything. So there's all these rules that come in with being woke. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I am saying it defies universal law. So you can figure out for yourself if you think it's a bad thing. Because basically at the heart of woke is a pushing against mindset. You see this so much in social media these days. It's what's known as the cancel culture. So some celebrity who has been fine, has some big following, been doing lots of celebrity type things, lots of people happy with what they do, and then they say something. They just happen to express an opinion that certain woke people or groups or organizations think is unacceptable. And then what happens is they get cancelled, which means they get a lot of abuse saying, you can't say this, we're not standing for it, you're no longer relevant in our lives, we are cancelling you. And so there's huge storms on social media against those people who've happened to say something that is unacceptable. It's pure pushing against. And it's basically the opposite of unhurtable, because unhurtable means I don't care what you say or do, that's your opinion. I choose not to be hurt by it. So let's just make this a little clearer, just so you see where I'm coming from. Let's look at what unhurtable means compared to pushing against. Imagine we have two people. One is going to be a pushing against character, one is going to be the unhurtable character. And let's refer to our energy flow diagram that I've shown you so many times in the Manifesting Lab now, you must be sick of it. It's where the energy stream of life is flowing through you towards things that you're focusing upon in your reality. And everybody has their own energy stream, and everybody has their own stuff that they're focusing upon in their reality. All fine so far. Now, with the unhurtable mentality, you're just flowing stuff, and your flow is kind of irrelevant to anyone else's flow. You just kind of get on with your life, regardless of anything else that's going on around you. If you see something you don't like, you just ignore it. You don't let it interfere with your flow. With this kind of pushing against mentality that's become quite popular on this planet, if you happen to see this person and they're doing something you don't like, you make your energy flow dependent on what you see them doing. So you might be, as a person, So as I said in the previous screen, let's call it woke, and I don't mean this as a derogatory term. I'm purely explaining the factual elements of this as I see it. Someone woke happens to have this rule-based idea in their heads that people have to behave a certain way in order to be acceptable to society, and they observe this individual doing something that is not good to them. Their energy flow is dependent on what that person does. And if that person does something that they don't like, they restrict their own energy flow, they make themselves feel bad, they cancel that person, probably in great numbers. And this person, let's assume that they're not unhurtable initially. So let's assume that they are themselves dependent on the other person's behavior. They see themselves being cancelled, being abused on social media, and they themselves then block their own energy flow. And so you've got all this dependent energy flow stuff going on, all this pushing against stuff. You have to walk around the world as though you're walking around on eggshells, trying not to offend anybody, watching every word you say just in case it happens to offend somebody. You're almost in a vibrational prison. Now, what does that remind us of, a vibrational prison? Yes, it's like you're putting everyone in a prison because everyone now has to conform to certain ideas. Otherwise, they're going to be cancelled. They're going to be shamed. They're going to be told that they're no good. They don't deserve to be a human being because they haven't behaved in a way that's appropriate. So you have this controlling thing going on here, and you've got this fear-based thing going on here. I'm sure you're starting to see control and fear. Seems a bit similar to what's going on in the world at the moment. Now, obviously, if this person on the left-hand side was unhurtable, then despite the fact that they're being cancelled, it wouldn't make the slightest bit of difference to them. They would just carry on being who they are. And you do see some of those characters around who basically don't care what they say. They're going to say it anyway because they're just being themselves. And we're going to talk about those characters shortly. So hopefully that gives you some basic understanding of what pushing against is. And I've given you the example of woke being a pushing against kind of mentality. There is also another excellent pushing against example, and that is the example of conspiracy theories. Now, full disclosure here, I love conspiracy theories, and that shouldn't be any surprise to any of you that have been following me for any length of time, because I've been saying that for years, even on Inward Quest, before the Manifesting Lab was around. And in fact, conspiracy theory is not a good term. It is said it is a term concocted by the CIA in 1967 to discredit those who questioned the assassination of JFK. But that may also be a conspiracy theory. So I don't know if that's true. But the reason I love conspiracy theories is because they provide different perspectives on life. I love fresh, new thinking, no matter where it comes from. And to me, the conspiracy theory is almost the height of fresh, new thinking. You will get so much food for thought. So to me, it's like a form of entertainment. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I think there's a lot of valid information, very valid information, within those conspiracy theories, within those who express them. But I also view them generally without emotion without having any of my buttons pushed. Now, we're going to talk about button pushing later. But when I'm watching or reading or listening to these conspiracy theories, to me, it's like watching a documentary. It's like, oh, this is someone's perspective of this particular subject. That's interesting. Thanks. I don't get dragged down into fear, into worry. So that's why I love them. They are still pushing against if you let your emotions run wild with them. There are plenty of conspiracy theories out there. You can start with alien civilizations enslaving humans from ancient times, to pharmaceutical firms wanting to boost profits through vaccines, through law enforcement, targeting people based on skin color. There's endless varieties of this kind of stuff. So it doesn't sound like I'm too much in favor of them. And yet, if you've seen me over the months on the Manifesting Lab, I have been posting a number of them. And you may be wondering why. Because I've said I really like them, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist. So let me explain why I've been doing that and what I think the true value of a conspiracy theory is. So in order to understand this, let's just take a look at this particular explanation here, which I've called conspiratorially organized vibrational intention dynamics. A phrase that just naturally popped into my head. I don't know what I was thinking of at the time I wrote this. Maybe something. So let's take a look at the dynamics of conspiracy theories. For many people, especially over the last few months, and this is Abraham's emotional scale, which you've seen many times, so I'm not going to explain it. But for many people over the past few months, they've been hanging around this level on the emotional scale. Insecurity, unworthiness, fear, grief, depression, despair, powerlessness. Many people over the past several months have been told there is a killer virus that at any second could strike them down, take their lives away, strike down all the ones they love. Could happen any time to any person. And not only that, this killer virus is so terrible that the only way you know that you've got it is you have to be tested. And again, you don't know how the test really works. So if the test says you've got it, oh no, that could be the end of your life. So there's a lot of people then hanging around in all this fear down here on the emotional scale. And I kind of observed that early on in this virus sort of situation. So I started posting up conspiracy theories. And the idea of that is, rather than be in fear, isn't it better if you just blame all the stuff that's going on other people, like the government? Isn't it better that you just get angry at the Illuminati or the Anunnaki or whoever you think is pulling the strings of your life? Or maybe you're in revenge, you're going to pull down a few 5G towers here and there. I hope you can see that there is method to the madness. There is a place for the conspiracy theory. Absolutely there is. There is a place to get emotionally upset about what's going on in the world, assuming that these conspiracy theories have any validity at all. And that's because they bring you from fear to anger. If you listen to some of the speakers and you let yourself get swept up in what they're saying, you really are furious about what's going on in the world. And ironically, that's a great place to be. Because if you are in fear and you reach this kind of place of anger, which is what basically this whole range is, now, vibrationally, it's not too much of a jump to actually get into something more aligned. So I am absolutely in favor of ramming conspiracy theories down people's throats if I think they're in fear. But once people have got past that point of the anger barrier, then I hope you can see there's more empowering things you can do to get your alignment back. And once you get your alignment back, you don't need the conspiracy theory anymore. My major problem with conspiracy theorists, as I have repeatedly said over the years, is that they leave you here. They leave you in anger. Very few give you a way to reach higher up the emotional scale. So I hope that is clear. I hope that explains some of my philosophy on the Manifesting Lab that has been there. Even if you disagree with conspiracy theories themselves, I hope you can see they have an absolute value, and I think they do a great service to people. Now, one thing, if you go along with the conspiracy theories, is that they kind of forget one thing, and this is it. Because some conspiracy theorists do hint at law of attraction. They kind of imply that, well, we're not just helpless, that we can change our situation. But if they hint at the law of attraction and they have any understanding of how it operates, they must surely also understand that the law of attraction is always consistent. And so, as I said, a conspiracy theory is a pushing against an agenda that you believe others have. And so what happens when you push against something? It's the same as the woke mentality. If you're pushing against people that you believe are imposing their agendas upon you, you're attracting more of it. You're actually giving more power to the thing that you don't want. You yourself, by getting emotionally involved in the ideas of conspiracies, are making those conspiracies more real. You see, the law of attraction is always consistent, and it's consistent for those who may be involved in conspiracies themselves. So let's just move on from this and talk about the second element that I think has caused a lot of what's going on. And it's kind of related a little bit to the conspiracy theory idea, which is why I also brought up conspiracy theories. It's the idea of sitting in the dark on a sunny day. Now, some of you over the years will have heard me come out with this phrase. I really like it. I can relate to it because I've done it myself when I went through some dark times. You basically sit in a room and pull the curtains and you don't want to engage with the world. And some of you may even understand that attitude. Sitting in the dark on a sunny day. It's a beautiful day outside. You're sitting indoors, telling yourself how miserable your life is. It is something that people do to themselves. But it's also something that I believe collective consciousness does to itself. Let me draw a diagram here. Imagine it's a sunny day. And let's talk in in broader terms than just sunny. Let's say the sun represents our source energy. And we've got all these people, and they're all enjoying the sun. So this is the population of planet Earth. And then what happens is, over time, these people are all connected to their source energy, but over time, they start to get a bit distracted by what's going on planet Earth. They start to get distracted by the TV. They start to get distracted by the media. Maybe they get distracted by Facebook, Twitter, whatever else you happen to use. They get distracted by social media. Maybe they get distracted by their own conditioning, what other people are telling them is going on in the world. Obviously, they can get distracted by the news. They can get distracted by technology, smartphones especially good at this, where you carry your own distractions with you wherever you go. And so what happens is, all these distractions, they're crowding out your senses, crowding out, making the physical senses get sort of overloaded. Because another thing that might happen is you get distracted by money. And this is where kind of the conspiracy theory idea comes in. You create a society where you're not rewarded by the quality of what you give to humanity. You're rewarded by actions that you do for other people. And you're rewarded in this money sort of reward system. And no one ever seems to have enough of it because there seems to be a disproportionate amount going to certain people. And so you're always under pressure to make more money. And so what happens over time is that this barrier builds up. We have this almost the sunny day being crowded out by the fact that our senses are overwhelmed. And so we've come to this situation of sitting in the dark on a sunny day. But now we're doing it collectively. Now you can argue that this is a conspiracy, that this has been done on purpose. And I'm not saying you're wrong. You can argue that there has been a conspiracy to disconnect people from their source, disconnect them from their understanding of what's going on in life, to make them think things like law of attraction are weird. The idea that your thoughts create your reality is a weird idea, but somehow sitting and staring at a lot of pixels moving on a computer screen or a TV is not weird. Or worrying about what somebody says about somebody that you don't know on social media is important. Like some celebrity says something you don't like and now you have to cancel them and put all your effort into abusing them. Somehow that has become more important than you seeing that it's a sunny day. I'm saying that collectively, humanity is now sitting in the dark on a sunny day. We make fun of those people who say that health is a natural thing. You don't need to take all these chemicals. You don't need to take vaccines. You don't need to do this, do that to be healthy. You just be yourself and your body naturally becomes healthy. Those kinds of ideas are ridiculed because we're sitting in the dark. We no longer know what's true or not. We're so dependent on what's around us. And you will have heard me rant and rave about this previously in a previous webinar. I've forgotten which one it is now, but where I basically tell you that just spend some time every day reflecting. And the idea of that is that if you spend some time reflecting, then basically you're just giving those things a rest, and you're giving this thing a chance to have an influence upon you. It's a way of making that day seem a bit sunnier again. So that's my concept then of sitting in the dark on a sunny day. And it is, for my mind, what has been gradually happening to the human race, and is happening even more dramatically now as we get told that there are bad things out there that could leap and get you at any moment. And the only way you know that you're safe is to pay attention to the media, your smartphone, your TV, social media, the news. The only way you know that you're safe. When in fact, you might also know just through getting your own emotional guidance. But that's not what they want you to know, is it, really? Now, I'm not saying all of this is done on purpose. If you believe that it's all genuine, fine. I have nothing against your viewpoint. I'm just stating that this is how I think things have become. And I'm also going to state further that not only have things become that way, but there are people who know that things have become that way. And they're using that for their own purposes. Because whether or not we are accidentally sitting in the dark on a sunny day, or whether we have been deliberately manipulated into sitting in the dark on a sunny day, there are agendas, it seems, that are exploiting the fact that so many people are sitting in the dark. So I could call this the politics of fear. I don't normally get into politics, but since basically most of the world is government driven at the moment, let's talk a little bit about what might be going on. It seems to me, and probably to some of you, that there is an agenda of fear. Fear works as a motivator. If you think of the 30-day Vortex Challenge, and you think about the people that struggle with it, and many people do struggle with it, the dropout rate is enormous. But, you know, and that challenge is not a big thing. You know, really at its most basic level is just feel good for a few minutes in the morning. And yet, many people struggle with that. So, if you happen to join the Manifesting Lab, and I said, you've got to do this challenge, or in 30 days, I'm going to come around and cut your little fingers off. And if you believed that, then the chances are you're going to complete that challenge. Obviously, it's a separate question as to why you join a group that tells you they're going to cut your fingers off. But let's ignore that. But you can see that the motivation you have from fear far outweighs the motivation you would have if I just told you, do this for 30 days in a row and your life will be great. Because most people have become conditioned by fear. I think some of the success gurus say that we are twice as motivated by fear as we are by anything positive. And that's probably just them guessing at it, because I think it's probably a lot more than that. So if you want to motivate people to do something, fear is an excellent, excellent way to do it. And here's an example from, this happens to be the UK government. I'm not picking on any government in particular. It's just that I really enjoyed what they wrote here. So I just wanted to share it with you, because I love it when these sorts of statements are made. It just makes me, it just gives me, like I said with the conspiracy theories, it gives me a different perspective on life. So this is from not a strict government document. It's from a document from a group advising the government. And the government, I think, and I don't quote me on this, but I think they have denied they followed that advice. And yet, if you follow the principle that look at someone's actions rather than their words, it seems like they have followed this advice. So this advice was basically about how to make people socially distance when the virus first came out. And this was, I believe it was initially confidential advice, but it has since been published. So some statements from this, and you can read this document for yourself. I'm not making it up. You can go and read it. So some statements from this document. I love these statements. A substantial number of people still do not feel sufficiently personally threatened. What a shame. Now, that isn't that appalling? All those people that don't feel sufficiently threatened. Whoa. What can we do about that? Another statement from this document. The perceived level of personal threat needs to be increased among those who are complacent, using hard-hitting emotional messaging. Yes, get them told, those people that are not sufficiently threatened. And how shall we do this? Well, let's use the media to increase the sense of personal threat. I'm not making this up. If this is a surprise to you, I'm sorry about that. But you can get a feeling for the mindset that's involved here. Now, if you are somebody that is non-conspiracy based, you might be thinking, well, the government's just trying to help us. And there are some people who just, because of this virus that's going around, there are some people who just will not listen to information. So we must scare them a little bit to listen. And if you believe that, that's fine. I have nothing bad to say about you. But it still indicates the mindset that is going on. This is an example from one government. I can pretty much guarantee it's going on with all the governments right now that are telling you that bad things are going to happen to you out of nowhere. It's the motivation of fear. And fear works best when people are sitting in the dark, even if it's a sunny day outside. And just in case you're wondering, but we have a free media that would surely report on all of this and tell us the truth. Well, if you have the time, you may wish to investigate how most of the mainstream media is funded these days, and you may find that it's not as independent as you might think. So the media, through coercion and through financial incentives, is quite happy to become a mouthpiece now of the fear as well. So this sitting in the dark on a sunny day now is even more effective than it was before. People are even more cut off from their source energies than they were before. And what's the vehicle for making us fearful? It's the law. You must do this because it's the law. You can't argue with that, can you? It's the law. Oh, yeah, got to do it. You must stick your fingers in your ears and stand on one leg for 5 minutes every day. It's the law. And yes, there would be people that would do it just because it's the law. People are afraid of breaking laws. So all that it requires is some small group of people who are motivated into making you feel fear, to create a thing called a law. Just make a statement that if you do this, we will take action against you in some way. And then masses of the population will comply with that law, no matter what their inner intuition says, because that's been cut off, because they're sitting in the dark on a sunny day. But the truth is, you break laws every single day without realizing it. I was actually going to have an entire slide in this webinar of laws that I'm pretty sure 99% of us break every day. But we don't know we break them because we weren't aware of them. Because somebody somewhere in some remote place, sitting in some strange, with some strange attitude, invented a law and didn't make it clear enough to somebody else that they were breaking it. So you are breaking laws all the time. So if you have any issue in your mind that you are somehow not a lawbreaker, get over it. You are. The law primarily now, as I perceive it, is about fear and little else. It's about imposing that agenda of fear that the governments, whether for sincere reasons or for bad reasons, for self-serving reasons, are imposing upon us. But we know that any human-made law is really irrelevant because you cannot break the ultimate law, which is the law of attraction. What you give out is what you get back from your thoughts. So while there are laws, and I'm not saying to you go out and break laws, but I am saying to you that probably what a law used to be and what a law is now are probably different things. Laws in human society, it seems to me, used to be based upon what was best for the most people. A kind of a just law, you could say. And yet, there does seem to be a trend over recent years to have laws that serve certain people and not others, and for no obvious reason, or at least not obvious to the person who isn't involved in conspiracy theories and all that sort of thing. And so they just go along with the law. And you might say you are some moral person and you're just going to go along with the law because society functions on laws and it's your duty to go along with the law. Maybe. But there have been numerous people throughout history who have been subject to laws that they don't agree with and they feel within themselves are unjust. You could argue one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. The guy who said that was a guy called Martin Luther King, who made a few changes across certain societies as a result of disobeying unjust laws. So these laws that are being brought in almost week by week because of the fear that is being spread, it seems to me on purpose. Whether they're laws or not, it's still your choice as to whether to comply with them. Because there's something that they don't want you to know. So let's talk. Let's imagine then we're in the world of conspiracy theories and it's not just the government that's involved, it's some 1% Illuminati that might be involved, or even behind them there might be some dark, shadowy creatures from other dimensions that might be involved. But what all of them don't really want you to know is that you cannot assert into the reality of another. And how do I know that they know that? It's because they wouldn't have to resort to fear if you could. You need another person to believe that you can influence them. In order for a government, in order for an authority to have power over you, You must believe that they have power over you. And so this is where, again, I mention my problem with conspiracy theories. While they may be accurate about what's going on, there is an implicit assumption that others have power over you. And in you believing that others have power over you, you're giving your power to them. Their greatest fear is that you don't fear. If you refuse to sit in the dark on a sunny day, if you refuse to be drawn into all the information that's coming at you from all sides, all your physical senses being bombarded, if you refuse to be influenced by that, and instead, if you look to your own internal source connection for your information, for what you feel is right, for what you feel is just, if you look there, you cannot be controlled no matter what laws are made. There is no level of coercion that can be applied to you, because no one can assert into your reality. Law of attraction is supremely powerful in this universe. Doesn't matter how dark the room you're sitting in. You can reach for the light. And that's what the fear mongers, the people who want you to feel fear, whether for good reasons or not good reasons, that's what they're afraid of. They're like the prison warders of the prison that you are in. And if you think about it, the prison warder is just as much a prisoner as the one they guard, because they're constantly watching the prisoner. They're watching everything that they do. They're checking to see that they're not trying to escape. They have no peace of mind. Now, if you have people that don't fear being in prison, and the law of attraction is responding to that lack of fear, those people that are trying to push fear have a problem. And the more people that don't feel fear, the bigger that problem becomes. Just by you being who you are, by you tuning into that sunny day outside, interesting things happen.